Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to recap the best decks of 2023. Of course, 2023 is coming to a close now, and it was a pretty wild year for the TCG. Of course, we had a brand new rotation with Battle Styles on, but we started the year off with 4 months of the Sword and Shield on format, so it was a pretty wild year. The meta was honestly pretty good, and it's pretty cool to look back at what were some of the best decks in the format, and what are some of the best decks overall this year. There was a lot of really cool stuff that happened this year. I also want to thank you all for 10,000 subs here on the second channel. It does mean a lot to see the growth on this channel, because I've been really enjoying making content on this second channel, just posting videos that I usually don't post to the main channel, like posting when new cards get revealed, doing top 10 videos, tier list videos, looking at deck lists from Japan, online turn results, all that stuff I've been really enjoying here, because I don't usually post that type of content to the main channel, because the main channel is strictly just focused to the decks and rogue stuff and the gameplay videos. But having the second channel as an extra place to really kind of give my opinion on some of the things within the TCG right now, it's great to have, and I do appreciate everybody for all the support on the channel over the past year. Here's to maybe getting 20K by 2025. Of course, if you are new to the channel and you haven't subbed yet, make sure to subscribe down below. Leave a like on the video if you want to enjoy. What were some of the best decks? What were some of your favorite decks of 2023? I'd be interested to hear down in the comments below. Let's get into the video now. Let's start this off by talking about Eternus VMax. Now, I will say most of these decks are not in any order until we actually get to the top 3. Once we get to the top 3, those are going to be, in my opinion, the top 3 decks of the year. But we're going to start off with some wild cards. I did want to talk about Eternus VMax. This deck, nobody expected to ever blow up this year, but in 2023, Eternus VMax ended up winning a regional championship, which is something that I don't think anybody was ever thinking. Etern definitely was a huge deck during the COVID era of the TCG in 2020. When it released, it was one of the strongest decks in the game, and it dominated for a while. It was one of the best decks in 2020, and then in 2021, after we got Rapid Strike Urshifu, Eternus effectively just fell off. It barely saw any play, but then it just had a huge rebound in popularity during the Silver Tempest format of all formats. And that's just mainly because it had a good matchup against Lugia, all thanks to cards like Galarian Weezing. It's one of the reasons why Eternus VMax saw success, is because Galarian Weezing was such a powerful card to have within the deck, with its ability where it prevented your opponent from being able to use any of their abilities, shutting off Comfey, Greninja, Archeops, Lugia V-Star Zone V-Star Power, Crobat, Lumineon, Arceus V-Star. Shutting off all these powerful abilities proved to be really, really strong. Combine that with Radiant Sneasler, Galarian Zigzagoon, you're doing some pretty relevant damage. And then, of course, you had cards like Temple of Sinnoh and Marnie, which was very, very strong against Lugia. And then, of course, the Eternus VMax was a very powerful beat stick Pokemon with 340 HP. This deck was one of the coolest decks to blow up in 2023, and it was awesome to see this deck become popular. I even played it to Charlotte, which was awesome. I've believed in the deck, and the fact that this is a deck that we can talk about of 2023 is kind of crazy. It won a regionals, and I think that's a great note for Eternus VMax to go out on. The fact that it won a regionals is fantastic. So while single prize decks were pretty bad this year due to Sablei's popularity, there was one single prize deck, however, that stood out from the crowd, and that was Reggies. Easily the best single prize deck of 2023. Reggies definitely made its mark this year. Now, Reggies was really only good during the first couple months of the year, but it did have a great showing this year. It did great at some of the ICs. It had a couple top 4 placements, almost won the regional that Eternus VMax won, and Reggies definitely had a lot of power. Well, it never had that major win. It did have a lot of consistent good places, and good placements, I should say, and the deck is just a very strong archetype that proved that not all single prize decks were dead. This was one of the only good single prize decks that actually stood a chance against Sableye, and that was thanks to cards like Scoop Up Net. Of course, having access to turn 1 attacks with the Aurora energies was pretty bananas. And the deck itself was one of the only decks that stood up to the power of Sableye. Reggies is probably my favorite deck of the year. If I had to pick a deck that I enjoyed the most, I would definitely go with Reggies. I mean, it's the deck that got me my first day 2. I got quite a bit of CPU with the deck this year, and I'm a fan of it. I wish Reggies would come back. I don't know if it will come back with rotation or anything, because we are losing the Reggie Lecky here. That does 120, and then the Reggie Drago, but maybe it'll come back. We'll have to see. I doubt it, but I would love Reggies to come back. But it's definitely a standout deck of 2023, in my opinion, and it's one of the only single prize decks that was good. It's also a very unique deck with how it plays. I mean, the goal of the deck is to get 6 different Reggies in play. That's a really cool way to play the game, and I'm a fan of Reggies, and it's awesome to see that Reggies made its mark this year, even if it was only for a couple of months. Maryon definitely has had a pretty good year overall, and I think it might get an even better year in 2024, even though it is losing Flaffy. Maryon did start the year off with a top 8 at EUIC, but that was with Reggie, and that's the way a lot of people were playing Maryon for a long time, was to play it with Reggie VMax. But once people figured out that the best way to play it is to just play Flaffy, the deck immediately started to get a lot better and started getting good placements. It did, of course, win the Toronto Regional Championships, and then it won LAIC once it got Iron Hands EX. Now, Maryon is going to be losing Flaffy with rotation, which will hurt it, but we'll have to see if Maryon can continue its momentum going into 2024, because I think that the deck definitely is still very strong, and right now it had a pretty good year in 2023. It's definitely one of the more infamous kind of go fast, hit hard type decks we've seen in a while. Abusing that electric generator really does help it, and it has a couple major tournament wins under its belt with LEIC and with the Toronto Regional Championships. Maryon definitely made a name for itself this year, and without a doubt, it's one of the best decks we've seen in 2023. Charizard definitely hasn't been in the game for a while, but has already made a pretty good impact. It started off like, okay, it didn't do as good as it could have done at its first couple regionals, but after everybody figured out that the best way to play it is with Arvin, Charizard immediately started seeing more success. It dominated a tournament over in Latin America, and then of course we saw it dominate over in America, as it did get top 4 in Toronto, and then of course it just took down the San Antonio Regional Championships. Now, while Charizard hasn't been out that long, it already has made a pretty big impact in the game, and I think Charizard is maybe going to have an even better year in 2024, as I think Charizard is one of the only decks that kind of survives rotation, and I think Charizard is still just going to be around for a while, and as long as we're heading into this big basic meta, which it seems like we are, Charizard is probably going to have a really good 2024. So, while it doesn't have quite the momentum to make the top 3, top 5, whatever, in 2023, it definitely has the momentum to make it potentially into it next year if Charizard does good next year, because I think it does have the potential to do really good next year. So it's already off to a great start in 2023 and already made this video. Of course, we got to talk about the deck that won NEIC this year, Rapid Strike. Rapid Strike has continued to be a pretty strong deck since its victory over in Ohio earlier this year at NEIC, and even now, near the end of its life cycle, the deck is still continuing to have pretty strong placements within the top 8. Rapid Strike is a deck that we will be losing with rotation, so this deck's last bit of legs are really all it has right now, but the deck is a very strong deck right now, and who knows, while it is only going to be around for a couple of months at the beginning of 2024, maybe it'll make next year's video if it wins a couple major tournaments before it ends up rotating. But Rapid Strike definitely is a really cool deck. I think Rapid Strike is just showing that Urshifu is one of the strongest cards and one of the best VMAXs we've ever seen. I mean, the card has had continued success for well over 3 years now since its release in the Battle Styles set, of course, in 2021. It was good in 2021, it was good in 2022, and of course now it's doing good in 2023. Urshifu and Mew VMAX are easily the 2 most consistently powerful VMAXs we've had. And yeah, Urshifu is a great card, but Inteleon is the star of the show with this deck, with its ability Double Gunner. It's one of the only decks that really could take down Lost Box really nicely, as Lost Box continued to be one of the best decks in the game, while Rapid Strike was one of the best decks to take Lost Box down. And once again, we'll see if it can make a spot on next year's list if it does well in the first half of 2024 before it ends up rotating. But what a way to go out. Definitely the end of an era with the Styles leaving. We definitely got to talk about Gardevoir, one of the most consistently powerful decks of the entire year after its big debut at EUIC with rotation, getting second place. Guardia's had some pretty good placements this year. It did win Milwaukee Regionals. It got second at the World Championships, got top 4 at LAIC. Guardia is one of the most consistently powerful decks in our format. And while I do think that the deck is in contention of one of the best decks of the year, definitely in the top 5 discussion, Guardia just hasn't had a lot of major wins, but definitely is a very strong deck. And while it is losing a ton of good cards with rotation, we'll have to see if Gardevoir can continue its success in the beginning of 2024, because I think that's going to be Guardia's last legs as one of the best decks in the format. I'm also going to be curious to see if Gardevoir can survive in rotation. I mean, it does lose Shining Arcana Gardevoir, Mirage Step Curlia, Battle VIP, Level Ball, Fog Crystal, Zacian V, Celebrations Mew. It loses so many cards, it's insane. So if Gardevoir can survive rotation and Gardevoir EX can in some ways still see some success, it'll be cool to see. But yeah, definitely one of the most consistently strong decks this year. Again, even with its big breakthrough at NEIC after it shot up in popularity with the release of Iono and First Energy, Guardia continued to see a lot of success this year and is without a doubt one of the best decks of the year. almost making it into the top 3 best decks of the year is Arceus V-Star. Arceus V-Star has had so much success this year. It is insane. Even before rotation, Arceus was a pretty good deck. I mean, there was, of course, the Silver Tempest format Arceus Duraludon deck. And then, of course, this year, there were a lot of really good Arc Piles. Arc Piles have been one of my favorite decks to play this year, and Arceus has had so much success. It got second at NEIC. It did win a few regionals, of course. We saw that Alex Shamansky won EUIC with his Arcdura Vulpix deck. We know that, Portland Regionals this year was won by Arctina. Arceus V-Star has had a very good year. And while the deck has been on the downfall for a little bit now, it is kind of starting to rebound a little bit, actually, in this meta. It did have a bit of a dead zone at the beginning of the format, but Arceus has, once again, just had so much continued success this year. It is one of the best decks of 2023. Well, it's not as dominant and powerful as it was in 2022, where Arceus was the king of the format and the king of the game at the time. Arceus has continued to see a lot of success this year with a lot of different versions of how to play it. Again, Arctina, Arcdura Vulpix, Arcdura Umbreon. My favorite way to play the deck is, of course, I did have a pretty good tournament with this deck. It's one of my personal favorite decks of the year. Arcdura was basically the best way to play Arc this year, as it did have the most success. Obviously, in the Silver Tempest format, there was Arcdura. Of course, Arcdura picks won any EUIC. Arcdura did get second at NEIC this year. And, of course, Arcdura was a decent deck even in the Obsidian Flames format we just had with Charizard EX. Yeah, Arcdura definitely a really cool deck, and Arcduraludon being the best way to play it, but Arc Piles in general just being one of the best decks of the year. Arceus is still going to be around with rotation. It does lose Duraludon, it does lose Umbreon, it does lose some good cards, but we'll see if Arc Piles can still continue to see success in 2024, because I'm always happy to put Arc on a video and a list like this. All right, we are now in the top 3 best decks of 2023, and to start it off, I'm going to talk about Lost Zone Box. Lost Box definitely has had one of the most successful years of any deck, and it has consistently stayed good since the literal start of the year in the Silver Tempest format. Even now, when rotation happened and it lost cards like Scoop Up Net, the amazing rare Pokemon, Lost Box continued to see success. I think the big breakthrough is that it won OCIC this year, with the Dragonite being the big new way to play it, and Dragonite continued to be the most popular way to play the Lost Zone deck. Of course, there was Lost Zone Kyogre, which was very, very good too. Lost Zone got 2 back-to-back second places at regionals this year. It continued to have a lot of top 8 placements, and it continued to be a dominant deck. I mean, even different versions of it, like the Lost Zone Radiant Charizard deck winning Stuttgart earlier this year, was a big deal. And Lost Zone has still continued to see success. Well, Jirachi and even Iron Hands and Valiant have been kind of the doomsday of the deck. The deck has still continued to be a very strong deck in our format, with basically just adjusting to the meta, of course, playing at the Paradox Pokemon within the deck. Lost Zone Giratina technically can be in this conversation too. I don't think Tina was going to make this list. I mean, maybe like the 11th deck that would have been in this video. But Lost Tina has had some good results, but hasn't really had like that super big breakthrough, and kind of became a popular deck again in the middle of the year with Worlds. But yeah, definitely Lost Zone has to be in the conversation. Lost Box is one of the most polarizing decks of the year. A lot of people really, you either love or you hate the deck, to be honest. Sableye definitely was the problematic card of the deck, obviously, preventing single prizers from really being that good. And the only one that we saw being good was Reggies, right? So Lost Box definitely was a bit of a menace to the game, but is one of the most popular and successful decks of the entire year, consistently being a good deck up until the end of the year. I don't even know how this is possible, but Mew VMax ended up being the second best deck of 2023. It won the World Championships. Mew VMax was thrown so many hurdles this year, with Drapion being released, with Spiritomb, a lot of big dark Pokemon like Charizard, Roaring Moon, even like other cards like Path to Peak being a bit of an issue for it. But Mew still was able to survive the onslaught of dark decks. Oh yeah, there's also Eternus VMax, that's another one. But yeah, Mew VMax is without a doubt the best VMax we've ever seen, and definitely is the deck that has, well, had a lot of really good consistent results. Even in the Silver Tempest Lugia meta, Mew is still a good deck. A lot of the builds were playing stuff like Aerodactyl V-Star in the deck to help against Lugia. It was also one of the only good path decks that could combat Lugia V-Star at the beginning of this year. But yeah, Mew VMax has had so many results. It won Hartford, it won Worlds. It had so many good results this year. It is pretty insane. But yeah, Mew definitely being one of the best decks of the year. One of the most consistently strong and powerful decks of the year. And it won Worlds, which is insane. I think what really puts it above something like Lost Box, which maybe Mew and Lost Box can be switched around with 2 and 3. It's really that Mew has stood the test of time and has stood its ground against these really big counters that have been released, like, again, Spiritomb, Drapion V, all being very good counters to Mew. Mew has continued to hold its ground and continue to be one of the best decks in the game. And, I mean, it won Worlds, which is a great feat for it. And definitely, we'll see if Mew can maybe squeak itself on at the beginning of next year's video before it ends up rotating, because this is basically Mew's last hurrah in the format, as it will be rotating with rotation this year. We'll have to see. But yeah, Mew definitely being one of the greatest decks, potentially of all time, to be honest, because the fact that Pokemon printed so many obvious counters to it and it still dominated and even won the biggest tournament of the year just proves that Mew VMax just is the deck. Speaking of the deck, the best deck of 2023 has to go to Lugia V-Star. Now, Lugia V-Star has fallen off a little bit at the end of the year, but honestly, this deck had so many dominating results this year, I had to put it at number 1. Of course, we started the year off with the Silver Tempest format, which was basically known as the Lugia format, as it was the most insanely broken deck of the format. I mean, it won a lot of regionals during its run in the Silver Tempest meta, and it continued to be successful even after rotation. It's crazy because I remember before rotation, a lot of people were saying that Lugia was dead because, I mean, look, it's losing all these good cards, Powerful Energy, the Amazing Rares, the Auroras, the other special energies that it played. How could Lugia be good after rotation? And it didn't die. We had Single Strike Lugia, which was another really powerful deck of 2023. I mean, it won the Fresno Regionals. It had so many good top 8 results, and Single Strike Lugia continued to be a very powerful way to play the deck. Lugia had a lot of consistently good results even after rotation, and I think that Lugia definitely is the deck of the year. It's very much the deck of the year, right? It started the year off by being the most dominant deck in the game for a couple months, and then even with rotation, the deck continued to be one of the top decks in the game, which is crazy because it had to adjust and have an entirely new way to play the deck. Now, Lugia will still be here with rotation. It is losing the styles, like I said, it's losing Single Strike, which is going to hurt the deck because it's the best way to play the deck right now. But Colors Lugia also has had some good results. I mean, I got to remember, Colors Lugia also did win a regionals this year too over in Sacramento. So yeah, Lugia definitely is the deck of the year in my opinion. And we'll have to see if Lugia can continue its success after rotation because, I mean, the deck does lose a lot of its powerful cards, but we said that last year, and it continued to be a good deck. So we'll have to see if it'll happen again with rotation. Because right now, the topic for playing Lugia is to play it with Earthen Vessels and Basic Energy, which might not seem synergistic, but it kind of is. I mean, I think Lugia's biggest hurdle will probably have to be Charizard EX, which is going to be its biggest matchup that's going to struggle against. But Lugia has had so much success this year. It is insane. And without a doubt, is going to be crowned the best deck of 2023. What do you think of this video? Did you think I missed out any decks on this list? Some other decks I guess I want to give like an honorary mention to was going to be Gudra, like Lost Zone Gudra, and then obviously I think Lost Tina is another honorary mention that I did want to include on this video. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Of course, thank you once again for 10,000 subscribers. It means a lot, and again, here's to 20K, maybe by 2025. We'll have to see how it all goes. And I'm excited to see what the new year will bring for the format, what decks will make next year's video. We'll have to see. Thank you for watching, everybody, and hope you enjoyed, and bye-bye.